Hello and welcome to the Curator Salon podcast. I'm your host Geeta Joshi, and today I want to talk about another reel that I posted on Instagram quite a while back now called 80% of Collectors, and I wanted to use this podcast to elaborate on that a little bit more. So I read somewhere, and I really can't remember where it was, that 80% of collectors who buy directly from the artist already feel like they know the artist. And when I consider my own art collection, I feel that's pretty true. 80% of it is from artists I know, or at least I feel that I know. So even if I haven't been to their studio or had long conversations with them, I still feel like I know them because I have followed them on social media, or I have seen their work appear in a book or a magazine or something like that. And I did reels about some pieces of my art collection last summer, so you can scroll through my Instagram and have a look at that if you want. But I then, would go to their socials or look around their website, and there's sufficient information there for me to feel like I know them. And so I wanted to elaborate on how a buyer of art can feel like they have a closer proximity to the artist, which makes that buying journey easier and smoother and all that kind of thing. So typically it is done through the type of content they share online. And that can be obviously social media, it can be their website, and then from there we typically migrate people to mailing lists. So again, being on artist mailing lists, I do get a good insight into what they've got coming up, into their practice and things like that. And if you are an artist who has a mailing list or a subscriber list, I do want to urge you to share more on there than just the events. Like a lot of times artists will only kind of send an email when they are going to be selling at an art fair, or they have an exhibition coming up, or they've been selected for a show or something like that. And I really want you to think about how you can be using your mailing list, not just for invitations, but to enrich that reader's experience and understanding of your artwork and your practice. So even if you think about some of the most common questions that you might get asked if you are somebody that does open studios, for example, or you've shown at exhibitions or art fairs, what were the most common things that people would ask you? That will be great content to move over to share on your mailing list, for example. So, one of the reasons we join the mailing list is, it's great to get the invitations and all that sort of thing, but it is really so we feel like we have a slightly different proximity, by just the act of handing over an email and letting you into my inbox. There is a sense of, okay, I'm going to there's a trade of value, right? And that value is a combination of entertainment, education, insights, all that sort of thing. So, making sure that you're sharing more than just invitations to your shows and your announcements and things like that, but having some insights into your practice, your creative process, maybe some history of your art journey, if that is relevant. If you are somebody that is constantly enrolling new subscribers, then maybe that first or second email that they receive from you can be automated, and that is where you tell them about previous successes that you've had, so that they can get up to speed on your career history if they are just new to your world at this point. So all of this helps us feel like we are, becoming more familiar and more aware of this artist. And this is really where I learn more about them. And then studio visits. Studio visits are a great way that I have learned more about artists. Obviously, sometimes it's discovering new artists when I have visited open studio circuits and trails and things like that. And, that time just having that conversation with them. Same with art fairs and exhibitions, if I go to an opening, or even if it's not necessarily the exhibition opening, but the artist is, still kind of invigilating and manning an exhibition during its sort of open days and things like that. So all of that, these are the kind of typical places that I learn more about the artist before I've even thought about being a buyer. And even when I have thought, oh, I would really like some of their work, I might not be thinking like, okay, I'm going to whip out the credit card right now. But there's a journey, I don't think people go onto social media or anything like that just going, right, what can I buy today? We're kind of enrolled into somebody's vision, we're kind of brought into their world, we get a sense of personality and all that sort of thing. And so there's this journey, and with it comes a time lag, because like I said, not everybody is ready to buy at the first sight of your artwork. So if you are somebody that is, let's say, posting on social media, or you are you're sending emails really infrequently, and it's just about announcing new work for sale. Like, there's a thing that we call product shock, and this is something that is used in sort of other industries. But all this time you've been sharing reels about process, and now there's something is finished, and it's like straight up there for sale. It would have been, you could have nurtured us along a little bit and announced new work was coming. You could have been sharing those images of the completed artwork before saying they are available for sale. And that is kind of, again, just if you think about like fashion shows and things like that, that is where, you'll see the runway shows, you'll see people talking about the runway shows, but you can't literally just go and buy that work straight away, right? There's a warm-up time. There's a time lag between, lots of people talking about it. We see the finished clothes on like a catwalk show or something, if you go onto Vogue.com, or if you follow any fashion influencers, for example, that they're talking about the work, the fashion collection that will be available for sale in retail or wherever a few months later. Now, you don't, as an artist, need to obviously have that kind of seasonal launch or anything like that. But my point is, we're seeing it, we're warming up to it, we're getting a sense of what this body of work is about before it is, cart open, before it is like listed on the online shop, unless you are somebody that has a lot of demand for your work, which is not necessarily always true across all the people that listen to this podcast. So the point is, it's about nurturing, like showing us your artwork, telling us what is coming, and just allowing that time for us to kind of settle in with seeing, like, okay, this is coming, this is a new, whether it's a new direction or it's a new collection, and talking about that as well. So, we're not always ready to buy on the first time of seeing it. It's different when you are showing with galleries, because galleries kind of, just that context changes things. But when the artist is selling directly, we usually need a bit more of a warm-up time. And this is also something that you can be, a marketing angle that you can be using to enroll people onto your mailing list, where you actually announce the new work or the new collection there first. And so it's like, okay, if I am interested, I need to get on the mailing list first to see the work before you perhaps talk about it on social media. So that, and then on this, it's really helpful actually to consider your own buying behaviour as well. Like, when did you last see something that was absolutely stunning, it was beautiful, you didn't need it, but you were really taken with how stunning it was, or how, whatever, right, attractive it was or useful it was, but it was kind of, but not a necessity. And when we have to think about our own buying behaviors, that kind of actually helps us with the marketing side of things. Like, how much information did you need? Like, even if you think you bought a piece of, jewelry or furniture or anything, right? It doesn't have to be artwork. It's something else that perhaps you have around the home. How much time did it take you to go, actually, I am going to go and buy it? Or how much information or research did you do about that item, that product, before you actually followed through with a purchase and reached out to, even if it was a store? Like, just think about that. There's a time lag, right? There's where not everybody is, like I said, quick to buy. Not everybody will buy on first viewing. And you might be somebody that also experiences that in your buying, the buying behaviours. So this is where making sure that you are putting out enough information and talking about the work, your practice, your credibility, your reputation, your exhibiting history, all this sort of thing can support the buying decision. And when you reflect on this, I also want you to think about it being something high ticket as well, because art is a luxury item for most people. It is, people have bought art from me for various reasons, and most people listening to this are not selling investment grade art. But nonetheless, it is something that, they might not buy a £200 dress, but they might easily buy a £200 artwork. But it's still sometimes a consideration. So, thinking about your own journey, think about something that you bought that was perhaps a bit more of a stretch. And just take a moment to reflect on, this kind of research you did around it, and how quick or slow even you were about buying it. Were you thinking that I'll save up for it? Were you thinking I can get it next month? Were you thinking I'll put it on a credit card? All of this can then help you shape how you make your art offers. So obviously there are people who will see something and buy it really fast, but this is usually a small percentage, especially if your work is in the thousands, unless they are actually doing something towards actively art collecting, or they are buying towards an interiors project or something like that, where they've allocated budget. But a lot of times, artists are selling to just the layman, right? They're not actually doing an interiors project or a house makeover or anything like that. So, if you're only focusing on that small percentage of people who are ready to go straight away, you're really kind of reducing your audience there. And then the problem with that is that you get more and more disappointed when people don't take fast action and buy from you. So just making sure that the times you are offering work for sale, you've done a good kind of lead up and nurturing kind of content there. So how can you do this more? It's really about honing your message and getting consistent with it, implementing the different selling strategies, and getting clear on what you stand for and what your work is about. So this is the part that will really create the connection and the rapport with your ideal buyers. So if your work is about, let's say it's about the landscape, people might not actually be looking for landscape paintings, but they might really resonate with the geography of your landscape painting. Let's say you paint the Lake District or something like that. Then it can often be the location there that is the thing that attracts them to it, whether they have experience of that environment or something like that, or it is just somewhere they aspire to go. It can be all sorts of things. So, kind of getting clear on what you are conveying in your paintings and being able to communicate that in words through like I said, through the written content is really going to help you. Along with this, I do think it is really important to learn to talk about your art. This has been something that I see artists often trying to avoid, especially artists who did not go to art school. The idea that art school kind of creates thinkers is there for some of my audience, but then there's the self-trained people who have done various sort of technical classes and all that sort of thing, but there's this kind of critical thinking art history part that is kind of really missing, and it kind of means that they often don't have enough to talk about their art, right? It's very much about the description or the materials or the process. And so, learning to talk about your art, maybe you need to do more reading to see how your work, what it is that you're doing with your artwork, how that fits into the broader art landscape, how it adds and contributes to thinking and ideas in that around those topics and so on, because process alone is rarely going to move people to a sale, right? I mean, you really need to understand that if you are only talking about process, then you're pretty much in the crafts or even decorative space. So, and with that in mind, if you've got ambitions of museum shows or something, then, you're kind of on a different path. So, kind of getting aligned to understanding what the cultural thinking is or discourse on these topics is, and how your work fits into themes that are already kind of part of topics and ideas. I mean, really, it is all about ideas. What are the ideas that you are not drawing on, but embodying in your work, and you're actually trying to convey through your work? Because saying, I make paintings oil on canvas is like, as I say in this post, like the least interesting thing to say. And so you really need to dedicate time to this. And this is where sometimes you might not actually even be ready for market, depending on where you are in your journey right now. If you are somebody that is only talking about process, then there's this kind of other bit of, again, we'll go back to the ideas you're conveying in your work. That is the thing that we really need to delve into and learn to say in different ways and put into a conversation with your audience. But you can also be doing that in artist groups, artist networks and things like that, so that you can help consolidate the ideas there a bit more. The other thing I will add to this is one of the things that is most interesting to art buyers. It helps them interpret it, because again, a lot of art buyers are not seasoned collectors, right? They're buying because they like it, they're buying for the home, they're buying for gifts, all that kind of thing. But for that person, that buyer, to be able to talk about their work is validating to them. And sometimes how they talk about it has to be kind of fed to them from the artist. I know as a gallerist, this is a lot of my work. It's like I'm actually helping people to, drawing their eye to particular details. We're looking at the metaphors in the work, and also weaving in oftentimes the artist's journey and the references they're making and things like that. So this, giving the buyer a handle on what they're looking at and how to talk about it, is what we're inadvertently doing here as well. And that is actually very empowering for art buyers who, as I say, are not seasoned collectors, right? They're not already immersed in art history. They're not in the art world. They're smart people, but just like this is a new subject for them. And to be the person that can enrich their experience of the art beyond, okay, it looks beautiful, and that visual experience is something that can also make you very memorable and somebody that they want to return to. So as I say on this post, let me bring it up again. Here it is. Okay, so with that, you can start sharing in the usual places, that being social media, your mailing list, your website, and so on. And here you start to teach your buyers how to read the art, the layers of understanding, interpretation, and points of connection, which empowers them to take a closer look, to talk about it, to engage with the ideas, and stick around because it hangs in the mind. To return to your email and your feed because you have something that is interesting, something that adds to the cultural landscape, and something that is more than decoration. That was a good reel. So here's the thing, like with the art and artists, and certainly my audience, it's very broad. There are people that kind of enter my world at all different stages of their career, and something more than decoration, like I said, this is kind of what separates the craft space from art and art thinking, and the things that will move into bigger collections and museum shows and so on. That's the thing that gives you more space and discourse and probably even media attention when you've actually got something to say, right? There's ideas being conveyed through this visual medium. There's nothing wrong with decoration. It's just the route to that is a little bit different. A lot of times, I do see artists on socials and things like that talking about how, they're big flamboyant abstracts made with acrylics, and that's really all they've got to say. Now, that's fine. There's absolutely still an audience for it. That is not necessarily the audience I'm talking to, but, like I say, there is definitely an audience for it. And sometimes that can feel like it's an easier sell because it is based on much more, those people are much more adaptable to, like, okay, well, I know the things with more pink and yellow sell, so they'll, change their colour palettes to be more, to kind of meet a certain sort of demand, right? It's a very particular type of thing, and it does often sit closer to the craft space as well. Anyway, so we've talked about nurturing the audience, and now they're primed and they feel they know you. They have you on their radar of artists, right? You become that bit easier to talk about if they're in just conversation, if they see your work somewhere, and they notice you as an artist that is on the rise, on the ascent. And also they are price aware. So, I don't know if I've talked about this on the podcast before, but it's really a choice for you if you want to show your prices on your website. I think initially most people should, so that people don't get price shock. People coming in price aware, I think, is good. And that means if they need to save, if they think, oh, we'll buy it after we sell the house, if they do it after after we get back from holiday, after we've paid off the car, then that is whatever, right? They can kind of make their choices, or they can, budget it in if it's like, oh, we can put it on a credit card. But that kind of price shock can make people run away. Whereas if your prices are more visible, it's an easier road to them adjusting to, okay, well, that is what it cost. And it can also mean that, let's say you have originals on your website at 6,000 or something like that, when you maybe do offer, whether it's limited edition prints or you offer smaller works on paper or something like that, which are going to come in at probably a lower price point, that feels a much more comfortable and easier and quicker buying decision because they already have some price awareness. and they've got something to put this, that relationship of that price, right? They know that your larger originals are like, let's say 6,000, then you offering a small original at 1,200. Suddenly that is in that relationship of those two numbers is the smaller one, and that can be the easier win. So I think making sure your customers are price aware, having your prices on your website is a good thing. Honestly, I think this is something to test. Sometimes you can have them there, sometimes you can take them off and see which one has more engagement or follow through and things like that. So that is something you can do. But the point is, your audience with this nurturing are coming in prime. They know more about you. They feel they've got, more aware of you. They're more aware of your aesthetic, what your kind of work is. They're price aware. And then when you have your next launch, whether it's an exhibition, it's an online launch, it is offering new work for sale to your mailing list and all of that, they're much closer to actually whipping out that credit card than when they first arrived. So it just makes them that bit easier for them to follow through with a purchase. Okay, I think that is all I have to say on this topic, but I kind of wanted to break down one of the reels that I had on Instagram recently that has had a lot of traction. And the various ways to work with me are in the show notes. Make sure to subscribe and share this episode if you found it helpful.